Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off because today I'll be sharing a Kickstarter preview of Lore of Aetherra, the Lost Druid adventure from Alchemy RPG. And we'll take a peek right after this. Howdy, gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I am going to be sharing something a little different. I am going to be providing a Kickstarter preview for a role-playing game adventure and world setting as well. So this is something I really haven't done before because I don't have a physical book or physical items to share with you, but I do have some digital assets. So once again, we are going to be talking about Lore of Aetherra, the Lost Druid from Alchemy RPG. This is a 5e adventure. It is a bit different than what you're used to seeing, and we're going to talk about that as well. One of the first things to point out is the fine folks over at Alchemy RPG are actually advertising with the Gaming Gang during this Kickstarter. So it's important that you know that. This is not a review because, to be honest, I've only seen the first 3 of the 12 scenes that are part of this adventure. So this is a preview. I will tell you what I think of the 3 scenes that I've seen and the other assets involved with the preview of the Lost Druid. But it's important that you know that the fine folks over at Alchemy RPG are advertising on the gaminggang.com. So, as I mentioned, this is a 5e adventure and world setting. One of the interesting aspects of this is the only thing you need from 5e is the SRD. You don't need the trio of core books in order to be jumping into the Lost Druid, because everything that you need outside of the mechanics are going to be part of this adventure as well. So first thing I want to talk about is the art style. Very, very impressive. Thought this was very, very cool. I like the art style quite a lot with this. Now, this is being touted as a cinematic adventure, and I will talk a little bit about what makes this cinematic in just a little bit. But first, I want to get you to take a peek at some of these really cool images that are available. Now, the adventure itself is not built in chapters, it's built in scenes. And that's not unusual these days for a lot of modern role-playing games to be kind of point-to-point or scene-to-scene adventures. So one of the really cool aspects here as well is the character design. So I'm going to share 3 of the important NPCs that you will encounter, at least in the first 3 scenes of the 12 in the adventure itself. Definitely, once again, really, really dig the art style. I do like the character designs as well. Very nice. Interestingly enough, this character here looks like he'd be evil, but he's actually really nice. So let's talk a bit about the adventure itself, the breakdown of the adventure. Now, I was able to take a look at a preview PDF. I am going to keep this spoiler-free, or as spoiler-free as I possibly can, because I do believe that Alchemy RPG is going to have a preview PDF for you to take a peek at. So I don't want to steal any of that PDF's thunder. Plus, as a game master, I don't want to steal the joy of you discovering the adventure on your own. That said, the way this is going to be broken down is, at least digitally, is that you'll have these scenes, and the scenes are relatively shorter as far as page space. So one of the cool things about the Lost Druid is that you'll be in a scene and you'll have the important information about the scene in front of you, but then you'll have links throughout to take a deeper dive into a particular NPC, a location, an item, a spell, what have you. And then once you click into that link and it takes you into there, you can click back to that chapter that you were just in. So making this a lot easier than just, flipping back and forth through pages at the gaming table. So this, of course, is going to be available as a digital product. I do believe there's also a physical book that will be available as well as one of the pledge offerings during the Kickstarter. This Kickstarter is going to launch on March 2nd. So right around the corner, it's going to kick off as well. I know it's noon that it's launching, but gotta be honest, I don't really know what time zone it will launch at noon on March 2nd. So one of the aspects you can see here, once again, from what you're looking at, this looks kind of like a traditional adventure presentation because you're not seeing those links in operation. So all in all, one of the aspects that I think stands out about the way this is presented with the kind of bite-sized chunks, as opposed to just a big info dump, like chapter by chapter, like we see in a lot of role-playing game releases. Here with these scenes, you get the information that you need to have in front of you to run this. And then, of course, you have the option to take a deeper dive. This is actually really nice for people who are just getting their feet wet as game masters, because they're not going to have to sit there and memorize everything. I'm a firm believer in doing prep before your role-playing games. I know some game masters out there don't. I am someone who believes in doing a lot of prep, but it's nice to know that you have the option of going light on your prep with this. So, a few things I want to talk about here. First of all, remember I mentioned that this is being touted as a cinematic adventure from Alchemy RPG. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, we've got music. That's right. We've got a soundtrack. There are a dozen scenes in this adventure, and some scenes have more than one soundtrack to them, more than one audio file. So you know what? Let's cue the soundtrack. And we'll listen to this for just a moment. I'm going to actually bring the volume up. Very, very cool. And these aren't just little 30-second audio clips either. For an example, the audio file we're listening to right now is actually 3.5 minutes long. And it's just kind of an overall theme. But in the preview, I was able to see, if I remember correctly, I want to say there's 6 audio files, and I listened to them, and one was 5 minutes long. So, got music to set the scene for you as well. And remember we were talking about the artwork? I'll tell you what, you'll also receive cinematics that are very, very cool as well. Let me share the first. So we've seen this image before. I shared this before, but here now we've got motion. We've got the ripples on the water. We've got birds flying by. We've got some mist kind of moving around. You'll have these 20-second long cinematics for each scene. Move to the next one here. And essentially, if you're using a virtual tabletop, say a Roll20 or a Fantasy Grounds, you can use this as your backdrop during these scenes, as opposed to just random logos and things like that. Here's the other one we've got as well. pretty cool. We've got the rain. We had a bird flying through the alley there. We've got, once again, some mist kind of floating around as well. So we've got that also. Very, very nice. Now, I do have to point out, there are, of course, people out there who will realize, well, wait a second, Alchemy RPG, isn't that a virtual tabletop as well that's in some sort of like a beta right now? Yes and no. So it's not a virtual tabletop. It is not a Roll20. It's not Fantasy Ground. It's not Foundry, because you're not looking at a bunch of tokens and various maps. Alchemy RPG is actually focused more towards theater of the mind, as opposed to exact representation on a scaled map and things like that, which I am cool with, because over 40 years running Call of Cthulhu, I tend to be a theater of the mind keeper. But you don't need to have Alchemy RPG. This is not some sort of a way to trick you into trying out their, I don't want to say virtual tabletop, but their digital offering as far as Alchemy RPG. Now, granted, this is being designed for that, but it's also designed as a PDF, as a physical book, and of course, also for Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds as well. So once again, it is not some way to kind of just try to convince you into trying the early access beta of Alchemy RPG. Now, I'm not trying to dissuade you from checking it out. I got to be honest, I don't know if it's an open beta or not. It might be a closed beta, but this is something that is also on the horizon. But Lore of Aetherra, the Lost Druid, is completely standalone. You do not have to have any interest in this digital offering whatsoever. So I've had an opportunity to check out essentially the first 3 scenes, which the PDF and other digital assets that I received, I got to say, I want to say the PDF was 40-ish pages long, 42, 48, somewhere around there. And one of the things that I think is pretty interesting about Lost Druid is the setting itself, Aetherra. So in Aetherra, we've got ether. And yes, I know a lot of people are familiar with ether as far as it's supposed to be in the air, and you've had games where you could travel to Mars on ether ships. Ether is a bit different in this. Ether is actually a material that binds everything together on this world, and it's also where people get their magical powers from. Yes, you can even ingest ether. Wonder what happens when you do that. Well, it's in the preview PDF. So rather than just, once again, doing an info dump like you would see from a lot of publishers, as far as with Alchemy RPG, The Lost Druid is going to be the first in a series of adventures, and they plan to release more setting information with each of the adventures. So you will have new adventures as well as additional lore and setting background as each of these arrive. All right, so what do I think of the preview? Once again, I do have to point out this is not a review because I haven't seen the finished product. I've seen the preview, which hopefully you're going to have an opportunity to see as well. There's a lot to like about it. I like the theater of the mind. That is how I run role-playing games. So I'm right there with that. I like the fact that even with, say, like the music, in the PDF, there are aren't they quick response codes? Is it CR? No, it's QRC, something like that. You know, the little codes that you scan with your phone. Well, if you do that, it'll actually start playing that music in the PDF as well. Now, it appears that if you had that on, say, a tablet and you hit the link, it'll start playing that music. I know it'll do that on a PC. I'm taking a guess it'll probably do that on a tablet as well, as long as you have the entire file downloaded on your tablet. So I like that. I like the cinematic feel. I like the cinematics that are included as well. I like the fact that this is probably an adventure that's going to be pretty easily digested by new game masters. Plus, keep in mind, even experienced game masters, I know some folks might think, well, it's going just scene to scene. I like to have a lot more, meat on the bone as far as my adventures. Well, if you're an experienced game master, you already know how to fill in any sort of gaps with your storytelling. So not to say that it appears that there's a lot of like wide open, downtime between the scenes, but I know a lot of people out there might be thinking scene to scene, I don't know, is there really enough to keep my players involved over multiple sessions? From what I can see, at least from the preview, this would be an adventure that would take multiple sessions to complete, depending on how long your sessions are. I tend to run about 8-hour sessions, so that's a little bit different. Something else that you want to keep in mind as well is you don't have to have any interest in the Alchemy RPG digital offering. You can just look at this as a Kickstarter for a 5e adventure. I like the fact that you don't have to have the trio of books. All you need is the SRD, and everything you need outside mechanics, understanding how the mechanics work, is all going to be right here for you. I will mention one of the things that I wasn't super keen on is the amount of read aloud. And some of it is kind of packed together. I would have liked to see some of that read aloud broken out, because Wizards of the Coast themselves have done studies. I know they're not real big on sharing these studies, but they've done studies themselves saying that really after 4 lines of read aloud, or about a paragraph of read aloud, players start mentally checking out. So I would have liked to have seen a little less read aloud, or just having more incentive to just paraphrase things. I know there are people out there who have absolutely no problem with a bunch of read aloud and things like that, and that's fine. I come from the old school. I tend to kind of create my own read aloud as I go. So I kind of spur of the moment, seat of my pants. All right, so this is something that I am really interested to see how it wraps up. Once again, all I've had an opportunity to see are the first 3 chapters of the 12 of the adventure. Pretty cool. I got to say, graphically, presentation-wise, top notch. So, by all means, give this a peek. See if it's up your alley. All right. Once again, my name is Jeff McAleer. Thank you so much for watching. That's it for this time out. Do want to point out, if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this Kickstarter preview, it'll also let you know when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs live right here on YouTube Monday through Thursday nights as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. I'll see you next time, and as I wrap up all my videos during this never-ending pandemic, here's hoping all of you out there are being smart and staying safe. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, if you haven't subscribed to the Gaming Gang channel yet, click right here. If you'd like to see the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, click right up there. And if you want to trust YouTube's algorithm to give you something to watch, click right there. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and everybody please wear a mask.